from around 1600 to 1799. But of course, much was happening there before. And since Caitlin reminded us in episode 2... Well,
in 1982, Columbus sailed the ocean blue and discovered America after it had already been discovered.
Yep, that's what happened. And so, for centuries, this land was lived in and cared for by its true owners, the natives. But I'm going to talk about all the things that crazy white people do. Right before what we look at now as Colonial America, there was a colony created called Roanoke Colony. Sir Walter Raleigh, Sir Walter Raleigh from England was a true Renaissance man. He was a poet, a writer, a soldier, an explorer, even a spy, which who knew spies were there in the 1600s. So he was also a trendsetter, and he was famous, or perhaps infamous, for popularizing tobacco in the UK. Like, he's the reason that so many people smoke now, which is odd to think of. So in 1584, Queen Elizabeth issued Sir Walter a royal charter allowing him to explore, colonize, and rule any, quote, remote, heathen, and barbarous land not actually possessed by Christian princes or inhabited by Christian people.
I roll.
So her only stipulation was that she got to keep 1/5 of any precious metals that might be mined there. Which, I mean, that's kind of smart. So Sir Walter was also given a time limit. He had 7 years to establish a settlement. So this was before, like, all the settlements that we know of in colonial times.
Okay.
So in 1585, Sir Walter prepared a ship and a crew and some civilians with 108 people for his land to go setting up this settlement in the New World. He stayed in England and continued to strategize and prepare. And he told the group of 108 people he would join them in a couple years with more supplies.
You guys figure it out, get it going, build all the houses, make some toilets, and then I'll come join you.
I'll come when it's, like, cool to live in.
When you have toilets and record players and, like, toilet paper and food, I'll come out.
I mean, that's what I did. I was born in the 90s, so I waited.
That's true.
I'm guessing I waited a whole century before I came out. So Sir Walter and his friends paid for the expedition completely, like, out of their personal funds. The items, everything. But unfortunately, they didn't have a ton of capital to invest, like other investors did for other colonies that found much more success. So some of the reasons that some colonies outperformed others were because they had better investors.
It's weird to think that there's an investor behind, like, a colony being built.
Well, think of it. That's, like, the roots of capitalism in corporate America. It's like corporations investing in the... Yeah, and that's what happened then. So because of the lack of supplies and resources...
2 burpees. It's a game
now.
God!
A second expedition was needed before Sir Walter could even go there. So they're like, hey... I don't know how they got this news to him, but they're like, hey, we need more stuff.
Pigeons.
It was, like, near New York, so maybe.
Pigeons.
To help the settlers, so this was to help the settlers that went there, the 108. The colony was on Roanoke Island, which is today in North Carolina. It's an island off the coast of North Carolina. So 2 people left Roanoke to go back to England, and they were appointed by Sir Walter to do so. To get the supplies, manage the second expedition, and bring the supplies back. Because they couldn't just, like, put them on a freight. They had to, like, go get them and have a crew and, like, bring them back. So these 2 guys were appointed to do that. John White was one of the 2 men. John White left his wife, daughter, and brand new granddaughter behind at Roanoke. Her name was Virginia Dare. And she was the first person born in the New World to English parents. It's kind of an interesting fact. If you're ever on Jeopardy, that will probably come up. The second expedition
Yeah, because we'll make it to Jeopardy. What's a composite number? No idea. You can't come on Jeopardy. That's how that would go.
You can't come on Jeopardy. It's just that or nothing. If you don't know a composite number, they're like, you can't come on Jeopardy.
Do you know what it is?
No. Hell no. I'm not a math man.
There is someone out there yelling at us right now.
I just think of, like, compost.
I'm Googling.
Look it up. So the second expedition took many, many months, but finally on August 18th of 1590, White's ship spotted the shores of Roanoke.
It's a positive integer, which is not prime.
Amazon?
4, 6, 8, 9, 10, 12.
So you can't get it on prime.
Still doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know what that means. Can someone please send us a message and explain what composite numbers are?
But please do it in a way that's, what do they call it when it's for dummies?
Oh,
it starts with
layman's
an L.
terms?
Yeah. Please.
Sorry, I Googled it. It didn't help.
So John White came back with the supplies
Okay.
to Roanoke. The first thing John noticed when his ship got to the shore and he, like, docked it or whatever you do, he set foot ashore and there was a tree standing there. And in this tree, 3 capital letters were carved. C-R-O. And this was most definitely a message because Sir Walter had instructed his colony members that if they were to leave Roanoke for any reason at all, they needed to leave a message as to where they went into either a tree or a post. And if they left due to an emergency, they needed to add the cross, like a Christian cross. There was no cross, just the word CRO. So White continued toward the settlement thinking, did they leave somewhere? He got into the settlement and it was completely abandoned. 108 people were there before, nobody there right now. However, he happened upon another post, and this one said Croatoan. And also it had no cross on it, which would mean it was not an emergency. However, it was part of a defensive barricade that was new and had not been there when White had left, meaning they were probably preparing for a defense, putting up a barrier gate. The word Croatoan was the name of an island south of there and of the natives who lived on that island. They're the Croatoan people. One Croatoan native, Manteo, was a diplomat and a translator guide for the Roanoke Colony. He was able to kind of be a liaison between the English people and the native peoples. So White immediately wanted to go to Croatoan, 50 miles away, to be like, well, maybe they went there. The group had planned a few years earlier to move their settlement more inland, so he thought, well, maybe they got an attack, and they decided to finally move inland. But he didn't have enough provisions, like food and things, to do a search so large, so he returned to England to get more help. Again, that takes months and months and months. And when he got to England, he told Sir Walter what had happened. And Sir Walter was like, well, I have a new venture in Ireland, and I don't have enough money to send you back. So John White didn't have the money to go, even though his wife, his daughter, and his family all lived in the colony. So he didn't ever get to go back, which is so sad when you think about things like that. Like, sometimes I think about that when people, went on ships to go across. You would just never really get to go back.
And it's weird because we just tell these stories like they're so long ago, but these were real people. It is weird.
He never got to go back.
Yeah.
All 108 to 122, it's it said, one place said 108, one said, there were different numbers, were never heard from again, ever. Nobody knows what happened to them. So 20 years later, Jamestown was established, as well as other colonies and settlements, and they all knew the tales of the lost colony of Roanoke. Because there was literally no evidence other than the 2 carvings in the tree and the post, tons of rumors and conspiracy theories about Roanoke ran rampant. So Sir Walter truly believed that the settlers must have went to Croatoan, like they put C-R-O. However, no archaeological evidence suggested this in the slightest. However, in 1993, a hurricane blasted through North Carolina and the original Roanoke Island and uncovered an impressive amount of Native American pottery and remnants, which led to more searches and entire societies dedicated to finding answers. So since 2013, countless old world objects and native artifacts have been found in Croatoan, like why would I pick this word? A rapier? Is that what they're called? Or a rapier? It's like some kind of thing.
You're on your own on this one.
Okay.
I'm not.
European copper and a gun barrel. So we all know those ones.
Okay.
However, many of these items date 50 years after the disappearance, so they haven't really found anything from, Roanoke. In 2015, so not very long ago at all, new evidence arose that suggested the settlers split into 2 groups. One assimilating into the Native American community and, living among the natives, and the others into a different Native American community. And just, those tribes, taking them as their own and then living with them. So, in the past, because I learned about Roanoke in school, but not that much, and I always connected this with diseases because as a child, I was like, well, they probably got a disease and died.
I played the Oregon Trail. I know how this works.
Yeah, I'm like, they definitely got dysentery, which is actually almost impossible because they never found any bodies. He didn't see any. They didn't find any bones.
Yeah.
So
you'd know if they all just died, starved or had diseases.
They went somewhere. So in the 16th, so now I'm going to talk about, which this is a very, very, not a great segue, but that's my segue into talking about medicine and diseases of the time. So that's all we know about Roanoke. Who knows what happened to those people?
That's crazy.
Yeah, the Roanoke Colony just gone. That's how you know it left.
That's the sound I make when I leave.
I'm sure it is. So in the 1600s, the most common illnesses in the New World were actually measles and yellow fever. And throughout the 1700s, the measles continued to be the most common disease, followed by influenza, smallpox, more yellow fever, and a few mysterious diseases like putrid fever. So smallpox obviously was really dangerous, and a part of the issue with it is that for the first 10 days or so you have smallpox, you don't have any pox, little blisters. You just feel unwell. which would have been super common and general in those times because the elements were harsh, malnourishment, there was scurvy, all sorts of things. So most people kind of felt unwell all the time.
I like the word scurvy. Scurvy sounds like a good thing to get, even though it's not. Because I really just like the word scurvy. It sounds very piratey. Like, I want scurvy, but I don't.
No. Scurvy sounds to me like a dance you would do, like in Pride and Prejudice. Let's do the scurvy.
It sounds more Pirates of the Caribbean.
Either way,
like, there's scurvy on board. Come along.
Free scurvy.
Great. Free scurvy.
Either way, Keira Knightley's there, so it's fine.
Johnny Depp is there.
Not in Pride and Prejudice.
And Pirates of the Caribbean.
Keira Knightley's in both, though.
So?
I like that you had nothing to say. That was your...
Continue with your story.
Okay, fine. So, in the first 10 days or so, when you have no symptoms, you're also the most contagious. That's very smart of you, little virus thing, to develop that way. Really good. So in the 1700s, they found inoculation. Inoculation was essentially a primitive vaccine where they would make a tiny cut in your arm, drop some pus from someone's infected blisters, and you would get the disease. But they found that when you contracted it, the case was almost never, ever as extreme. It was always more mild, and it reduced the risk of mortality.
Who was the first person to think of that? And who was like, try my arm. I'll take some of that pus.
Definitely a punishment, I'm guessing.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, they just made...
They probably had no choice.
Yeah. New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania had the worst bouts of malaria because their colonies had more...
Water?
Mosquitoes, which live in water, so yes. Colonial people actually thought that malaria was caused by breathing air near stagnant water. Mal means bad, area means air, bad air.
That's because that's where the mosquitoes hang out. I'm from Alaska. I know mosquitoes. They're our state bird. I'm not kidding. I mean, I'm kidding. They're not the state bird. But
what is the state bird?
I don't know. I always said it was mosquitoes. Eagle? I don't know.
I don't think Oregon has a state bird. Oh, yes, it does. It's the western meadowlark.
The willow ptarmigan.
Oh, yes, of course. The willow ptarmigan.
It's actually pronounced ptarmigan. But it's like pterodactyl. The P is silent.
Oh, ptarmigan.
Why can't you hear a ptarmigan go to the bathroom? Because the P is silent.
So,
there's a town in Alaska called Chicken. And the story that we always heard, and I don't know if it's true, but the story I always heard is people wanted to name it ptarmigan, but they couldn't figure out how to spell it. So they called it Chicken.
That's really cute, actually. They're like,
there's a chicken Alaska.
This will suffice. That's hilarious that there's a chicken Alaska.
Yeah, there's a chicken Alaska.
You were a chicken Alaska.
Jesus.
So if you get malaria, you get chills, fever, vomiting, then your blood cells are destroyed, so you either die from anemia or your blood gets super thick and clogs all your organs. Did you know that?
I do now. So it feels like a hangover and then you die. Great.
So yellow fever is essentially the same thing from mosquitoes, but you also become very jaundiced. It deeply affects your liver. Putrid fever, or typhus, is caused by the feces from body lice and is almost always an issue for the very poor because they were often overcrowded and lived in unsanitary communities. So a lot of those people had putrid fever. You get a high fever, you have chills, and a full body rash, which sounds horrifying. But alas, the odds are that the Roanoke civilians either moved inland, assimilated into local native tribes, or tried on their own to return to England and got lost or died at sea.
Okay, this is going to sound really dumb, but something as small as body lice, I can't imagine something that small pooping.
Okay, just because you can't see it poop doesn't mean it doesn't
But
poop.
isn't it weird to think of poop that small?
No, Caitlin.
Because lice are microscopic, that means their poop is microscopic. That's the first thing I thought of.
That's the first thing you think of in every episode. And they had buckets under... Is it for their poop? No!
Okay, that was a fair question. They had buckets in the ground. Toilet. What else is a bucket in the ground for?
Hide your belongings. I told you.
Toilet makes so much more sense.
Are there any microbiologists out there that could please share with Caitlin how small things poop?
I want to see a microscopic picture of poop. I'm dying.
Oh, God. Anyways.
But come on. Lice, it's like Plankton from SpongeBob pooping. He's so small. I'm going to stop. I'm sorry. I'm not
Apologize to our listeners right now.
No. Poop is funny.
I'm sorry.
I'm not sorry.
You're gonna make.
I'm gonna confuse people. I'm gonna talk about stuff and then be like, Sarah.
Oh, we never said I'm Sarah, the one with the Roanoke story.
Oh yeah, that was Sarah. Caitlin is the one who always talks about poop. Caitlin is the one who burps. Caitlin is the one who went